Nah, I guess. Yeah, it's better. So, hey, how's it going? I think last week I talked about a few different subjects and I put a pin in for a different video. So today I wanted to talk about how we got here from the origins of D&D to our sort of current community. You know, something that started as, well, depending on how far you go back, it was pretty sort of elite classes of people played war games and battle games, and even the roots of Dungeons and Dragons, it's mostly sort of middle class and up white guys who are playing it. There were women and people of color in the community from the beginning, but generally just something that was it was a club, and these were the most of the people that sort of ran games and played it. And attitudes, sexist attitudes reflected in both the structure of the game and art and gatekeeping and such like that, and how the pastime of tabletop role-playing games it seems to me, has sort of made it through a crucible of all different types of problems, from the vicissitudes of the Satanic Panic to the effects of Gamergate and the discussions that were born out of that, and what I feel is some real growth that's happened in our community. I grew up out in a very rural environment outside of Nashville, Tennessee, very much in the country, and very much surrounded by religious folks and religious communities. And at the time that I grew up, particularly around the time that I started playing, found an interest in tabletop role-playing games, or it came around me. It was during what we've termed the Satanic Panic, which was a period in which certain church-going folks and politicians and psychologists misunderstood tabletop role-playing games and deemed it as a threat to mental health and morality, sanity, and all sorts of things. As I came into high school and I met more people, I found, I'd never really been able to play it. I grew up in the country by myself. I had some of the books, this and that. My sister would come home from college, and she and her husband would play. But it wasn't until I got to high school, middle school, I met a few other guys that played. And, we had a small little group, four of us, who would take turns to, being a dungeon master. But then once I got to high school, I met a clutch of other geeks of different stripes that all were either already role-playing or interested in tabletop role-playing games. It's also when I got into combat sports, the SCA and Daggerhair Belagarth, for anybody who's familiar with those things. And so I met, again, another sort of brace of nerds, and begin, finding all these different types of gamers and these different types of experiences and that people wanted and could provide, as far as being a dungeon master, and sort of found a community and support. And that was definitely after, well after the Satanic Panic sort of breezed over. I've gamed on and off. It's mostly been among my groups of friends. Only recently, maybe in the past 6 months, have I delved into the online community. And what I found has astounded me pretty well. The amount of representation of LGBTQ people, of non-white people of different nationality backgrounds and ethnicities, and of the different sort of discussions that have come up around role-playing games and within them, evil races and species, the concepts of alignment, all these different things. It's just really, it's puzzling to go through the steps of it. And I don't think I have all of it mapped out necessarily point by point in any sort of essay, but it seems very much like as we have sort of we developed this thing that we call tabletop role-playing games, and the longer we have it, it seems like it's the more we can do with it, and the more people are interested in the I suppose I guess that means there's just more, like, it's growth. The whole thing is growing. The nature of sitting at a table and playing cooperative make believe with dice, and of course the communities and companies that produce things, their approach to it, both in terms of inclusivity, but also just nuance and ease of play and stuff. Games used to be incredibly arcane, especially Dungeons and Dragons and some of the early fantasy systems, like Rollmaster and some of the superhero games, just tomes of arcane rules, very much inaccessible. Add to that that is very much white and very much male, in a way that was prohibitive to a lot of people, made it absolutely inaccessible to a whole lot of folks. And I can look back at different people in my community, people that I met through different communities, and sort of see how things changed just by looking at my gaming groups and how those people split up, evolved, grew, had new styles of play, as friends of mine came out as gay, as different people, their sort of underlying ideology gained solidity as they got older, and people would, maybe groups would begin to divide or debate on certain subjects. And so it's interesting how tabletop role-playing games are, any human arena is a place where humanity is going to exercise and organize and debate with each other on the things that we have yet to figure out, the things that we're still arguing about, the big issues, as far as sociological things and psychological things, are going to come out in tabletop role-playing games. And I think that's really fascinating. I'm curious if anybody else has any insight onto this and sort of the process that tabletop role-playing games have been through since the 70s, just the 70s, and the different developments and debates, problems that still exist, that really the conversation is just warming up to, and if that, to things that are pretty much settled for the most part by community. For instance, to change the law or the rules in D&D 5e on alignment, to get rid of them entirely, seems kind of pointless at this point. Most people use them as optional. They use it as just a sort of a guide or feel, or they simply use it mechanically, homebrew some rules around it, or they don't use it at all. I think it may as well be adjusted to alternate rules, and I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One, I think the debate around it is really interesting, and I think it's still bearing fruit. The other reason is that I think when you look at psychology and archetypes, you look at the meaning of the story, read the hero of a Thousand Faces, look at the hero's journey, delve a little bit into Jung, and then you look at tabletop role-playing games, it takes on a whole different meaning. And I think that, again, I could probably do a longer video on this, but tabletop role-playing games are a place where the inner can become the outer. It can be explored. And within that domains, that realm, inner world, light and darkness, good and evil, they have some sort of meaning. It's not perhaps applicable at all in terms of morality to the world around us. Certainly has no connection to skin color or race or anything of the sort. But the concept of darkness within somebody, or darkness, a darkness representing evil and cold and death and all these things, and light sort of representing warmth and wisdom and heroism and triumph. I think these are important principles of the overall aspect of fantasy and how we engage with it. I just think it's important to have the conversation and to really think about what these things actually mean. You know, these are larger than life creatures, characters. They are archetypes. They are not human beings. They're not people. They don't accurately represent people. They more than just a side of our personality. They represent an archetype, you know, an archetypical aspect of our subconscious or some expression of that. And I think to cut out alignment entirely doesn't leave any room for that. But either way, I think this debate is interesting, but again, I think the rules change is unnecessary. But that just represents sort of one bit about how our sociological nuance in our society is playing out in the environment of tabletop role-playing games. So looking back through years of being hassled and harassed by other kids that I grew up with, having multiple family members tell me that it was a foolish pastime, that it was dangerous, deadly for my mind or my soul, to seeing not only is it widely accepted and celebrated, it is something that is becoming more inclusive and is becoming a place where people can explore other aspects of themselves more consciously. And I guess I'm just stunned, and I just kind of wanted to share that with everybody and see if anybody else had any insight. If there's any other any other grognards like me that have seen that spectrum, or older than me, sure, that have seen a longer spectrum. I'd love to get into the discussion of the history and sort of where we've been, to get a sort of a "you are here" dot on the map of where we're at in terms of as a community, but also just the practice of getting together and playing at a table, and maybe just to talk about where it might go. That's about all I have for now. A couple of the pins from last week I'm gonna do a short video about here pretty soon, but I mostly, I wanted to check in again. It's been a week, and I wanted to try out my new lights, so hopefully I look pretty clear and you guys can see me all right. And anyway, thanks a lot, everyone, ladies, gentlemen, everyone else. Wow, that was terrible. I'm gonna have to edit that out, and now I feel like that ruined the entire video. Habits of speech, man. And then scrambling to be inclusive. I think it makes everything worse. I think it might have been better if I just stuck with guys, but I do want to avoid that. I like the term crew, gang, folks, things like that. I know that guys is gender neutral to a lot of people, but it's not to everybody. So I think I'm just going to leave this in the video, and yeah, I hope I didn't offend anyone. Again, any amount of discussion on any topic that come up in my videos, please, in the comments, hit me, and don't hurt. I'm trying to be as good as I can as everybody else, so I do want to acknowledge my mistakes and get better. So thanks for joining me. I really appreciate you. Please like and subscribe. It really helps out my numbers. Commenting, of course, does too. Share this video with anybody that you like. And if you'd also like to connect with me, connect with some of my other platforms, there's some links in the descriptions and in my profile. And yeah, you can also just open a discussion with me in the comments below. Thanks a lot. Everybody have a great midwinter holidays, and we'll see you all next week. Thank you.